Hey guys, welcome back to the Movie Club. Today we'll be looking at everything I watched in the month of March. Now, these are only going to be short little things I noticed while watching the films. If you wanted any more in-depth analysis or discussion, please let me know down in the comments below. So for all these Oscar-nominated films, we'll be doing a segment called GOB, Good or Bad. Now, bad is 0 to 2.5 stars out of 5, and then good is 2.5 stars out of 5 to 5. So very general terms. If you wanted any more elaboration or in-depth thoughts on any of these films, go check out my Oscar tier list video. Fire of Love. Good. Tell It Like a Woman. Good. An ostrich told me the world is fake and I think I believe it. Good. Ice Merchants. Bad. My Year of Dicks. Good. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. Good. The Flying Sailor. Bad. Ivalu. Good. Night Ride. Bad. Lee Pupil. Bad. The Red Suitcase. Good. An Irish Goodbye. Bad. Navalny. Good. All That Breathes. Bad. EO. Good. Argentina 1985. Bad. And finally, A House Made of Splinters. Good. So glad everyone could join me for that little cute segment. Now let's get on to the more interesting film. So first up is Chicago. It was a very big, lavish musical that somehow felt quite confined. Because it had all its main musical numbers set on a stage because of its origins on Broadway, it didn't really translate well into film, just because film has more capabilities with like set design, camera movement, like sound, color, everything than a stage does, that it just didn't translate very well. Next, for me, I want to talk about the camera quality. It was just very distracting how grainy it was. It had a lot of noise. And for me, I feel like I've seen early 2000s film that looks so much better. Like The Lord of the Rings, for one, looks insanely better in its camera quality. Now, it might be a thematic choice, but again, it just didn't translate well over. And then the pacing for me was just really weird. It was quick in the beginning, and then once Renee Zellweger's character announced she was Faco Prego, it slowed right down, and then the court case happened, and then right after that, it ended, after like people getting shot. So it was very confusing. I was like, whoa. Next up is The Shining. For me, this one wasn't as amazing as people have said, as I've heard. It was very small and just really boring for most of it. And the mother of the child just kept on screaming and it infuriated me. Like, I get she's scared, but if she just shuts up, he won't find her. Like, shut up and run away. And with the window too. The window, fucking like smash it. I don't know, like hit it, break it open. It's like an old hotel. It's not that sturdy. There's things in the bathroom that I swear she could have just broken and jumped through. Anyways, that infuriated me. She was just like helpless most of the movie and she relied on men to save her. It was like, what are you doing? Yeah, so that was a bit weird. And then, but the one thing that saved it for me was the incredible shots and like the famous elevator scene with all that blood was really cool to look at. And then when the kid was just rolling around and the floor was changing, somehow that creeped me out more than like the two twins just standing there. Oh, and that old lady was really creepy too. Yeah, I don't like old people. They scare me. Leading up to Scream 6, I rewatched Scream 2022 and oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite films. I love it. I didn't know anything about Scream. Like, I've heard of it. I wasn't born under a rock. I just never watched them. And so I went into this film like completely blind when I first watched it last year. And it was just so cool. And me rewatching it this year was just, I had the same experience, really fun. I love the cold opening with Jenna Ortega. I'm so thankful she didn't die because she's just amazing. And my favorite line from the film is welcome to Act 3, love it. And then my favorite kill is the shower scene. Like, yes, I did want him to survive, but I get that he needed to die for like stakes. So I'm happy that he died that way. It was just so cool. He was like almost about to open the door and then he didn't, which I was like, ah! Anyways, that was cool. Next is Scream 6. I loved the cold opening. It was so cool. Whoop! You know, I won't spoil it, but like, it was sick. It was so unexpected, fresh, new. It was just amazing. I was not expecting to open up the fridge. I was a bit confused who that was, but then I realized, like, at the end of the film, I was like, oh wait, the fridge guy's the friend. I'm a bit slow. And the ladder sequence, oh my God, I was like, I was on the edge of my seat. Same with Chad's like stabbing scene. I was shaking. I was like, no, Chad, don't die. I was like scared. It was so scary. Yeah, I was shaking for that scene. And the new setting of the film in New York was like an amazing change. I'd recently first time watched Friday the 13th 1 to 8. And on the 8th one, they go to Manhattan. And oh my gosh, that was the most boringest thing I've ever seen. They go to like a dock. So they don't even go to like the city. They're in a dock and it's just like on top of a building. Terrible use of location, but that's fine. Back to Scream 6. Very good use of location. It was very good. Next up is Forrest Gump, and I'd never seen this before, and it's just so wholesome. I never wanted to listen to an old guy talk about his life before until now. My favorite famous storyline, because he went through like 3 phases of being accidentally famous, is the ping pong stuff. That was so funny. He was like, witchy, witchy, witchy. He's like, I'm famous. So that was funny. And the stuff with the kid was also really heartwarming. The only moment I cried in was the ending where the butterfly, was it? The feather landed on his hand. That was really sad. But yeah, it's just a really cute film. Next up is Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Now, I'd seen the first one a couple months ago, but this is just like a really weird sequel to a really weird film. Nothing really makes sense in the end, and he gets saved for being horny, which is really funny, but also just like really dumb. But the thing I will give it merit for is that it had visuals that still hold up today, like incredible visuals. The thing on the stomach was like really scary for me. So that was really good. So visuals good, story bad. Keeping on horror, I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and the only thing I have to say about it is, ew. So gross. I don't even want to talk about it. It gives me the ick just thinking about it. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch number 3. But it was really gross. It was the exact same as the first, like ended the exact same way and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just like really disgusting. So not really my thing. Definitely watch 3 though. Another horror, kind of like family kind of scary horror, is We Have a Ghost. It was a Netflix original, and it was just really long. Super, super long. It had like 3 main storylines. There was FBI involved. There was a reporter who was just chasing fame. There was the whole social media thing. It was just like a lot going on and not a lot being said about any of it. And then in the end, it was just like, what did I watch, you know? After We Have a Ghost, I was a bit hooked on the David Harbour train. So I watched Frankenstein's Monster Frankenstein, which was just a bit weird. It was very confusing, but it was very fun. It was just like playing on like documentaries. So in the case, it was a mockumentary, which I really like mockumentaries, but it was also like found footage of a thing that never happened with like facts that don't exist. It was very interesting, but it ended at a very weird time. It just like went nowhere. So leading up to Creed 3, I watched Creed 1 and 2. Now Creed 1 is a very slow film, Doesn't really have too much fighting going on, but it's very interesting to look back at this film in regards to like Black Panther. You can see why Marvel hired him due to this film's like, it has similar stylistic and pacing choices that are reminiscent of Black Panther. So you can see the kind of thinking process Marvel went through. Now, Michael B. Jordan does a really great job also at his dramatic acting. You can see more than just him punching people. He goes through like emotional trauma and he has to leave the baggage at home for the fights. It's all very good. It's very good performance. Creed 2 is my favorite one out of the three. I'll get on to Creed 3 in a bit, but Creed 2, it has just very strong stylistic choices with its shots. Its music is really good. Michael B. Jordan does an amazing job. It's just a very well-rounded film, and it does its best at trying to hide the fact that this like boxing film is not about just men fighting men, toxic masculinity kind of thing. It's about like family and your name. It just does a really good job at creating a story that better hides the fact that it's just two men punching each other in the end. But yeah, after watching the Creed films, I went on a bit of a history lesson and watched all of the like 1880 like short films that a professor did in the past of just like naked people walking. It was very weird, like very weird. You could see like as it progressed through time, they like wore more and more clothes because they realized how fucked it was. And yes, man walking around the corner is better than Babylon. Fight me on it. But yeah, I watched like 10 of those. I only logged like one on Letterboxd because like that's a bit outrageous. They're like 4 minutes long. I don't need to log all of them. But yeah, they were just very weird. A good history lesson, but very weird. Next up, I rewatched The Breakfast Club. I absolutely love this film. I like can't really explain to you why I love it so much, but just like the characters, looking past the facades is just like a really interesting concept. And I don't think any film has really done it as good and as simplistic as The Breakfast Club. Like people and the facade they put on and then what's going on at home, you can never really understand people's motivations until you understand their real life and what's going on behind the scenes. So it's just a very good film at doing all that. It's just, it's so good. And the nerd, the nerd. If The Breakfast Club was made in modern time, I reckon the nerd would have been like in the closet. Definitely in the closet. He was giving me in the closet vibes from the very beginning. And I know like there's scenes of him looking at the princess and being like, ooh, but like the princess and the jock were standing right beside each other. So we truly don't know. Anyways, I think if it was remade, he would be LGBTQIA+. Next, I watched an Australian film. It is called Baby Teeth. It's very good at not feeling like token Australia cinema. The acting is phenomenal, the pacing is really great, and by the end of it, you understand why the parents let this 21-year-old, 21, 23 kind of vibe, that age range, date their 16-year-old daughter. Like, she had cancer. They were just trying to make her happy, and they deep down, they knew she was gonna sometime pass away, and he made her happy. And that was the main thing to them, making her feel happy and loved in her last few years. So it was just a really cute film. It was devastating in the end. I was sobbing. I was like broken, but yeah, it was very good. Creed 3 is next. No, it's not my favorite in the Creed franchise, but it has some of the most incredible cinematic choices. The slow-mo shots in the beginning were like amazing, and they did some in the end too. But for me, the script was its main issue. It just didn't hide well that this film was about two men fighting about their dick size. It was just like toxic masculinity, the movie, and it didn't have the best story to warrant that kind of messaging. So it just like didn't do as good as a job as 1 and 2 did at making the story the main component of the film. Next up is Phone Booth from like 2002 with Colin Farrell. I didn't realize Colin Farrell had been acting for so long, but here we are. This film aged really badly, like not like fine wine. The opposite of fine wine. I don't know what that is, like rotten wine. It's like in modern day, if some rando is phoning me, I'm not picking up. I'm letting that shit go to voicemail. I'm listening to the voicemail and then maybe deleting their contact and blocking them because I don't know the fuck that is. Like, oh my gosh, it was so dumb. And the end line is like, an open phone needs to be answered, doesn't it? Or like a ringing phone needs to be answered, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. Text me. Shoot a text. It's fine. Yeah, so that was really funny to think about. And it's really interesting to see a film pretty much just be a one-man show. Like Colin is just the main guy. There's no like supporting. There's like a few, like the police officer and the wife and the guy on the phone. So there's a few more characters involved, but he really carries the whole film and there's not really anything else other than we start with him and we end with him. There's nothing else going on in between. We don't even see like the wife get the phone call from the bad guy. We don't really get that. We just hear about it from Colin. Yeah, Colin. So yeah, it was just really interesting to watch. Next up is John Wick 4. This film has some of the best action sequences of modern cinema. Like the Paris stuff, the roundabout, stunning. At moments, I couldn't tell if those were real cars. At times where I see them like just miss it, like they just miss him, but they don't slow down, and he's just passing him, they don't slow down and they keep driving. That was kind of a telltale sign that it was CGI, because in real life they probably would have slowed down a little bit, but it was still really convincing and super stressful for me. I was like, what if I'm driving? Like, I would literally stop my car. There are these men with guns. I would stop my car and like hide, but that was so stressful. And then the stair scene is just phenomenal. The Tokyo scene wasn't as phenomenal as I expected it to be, but it does a really good job with like lighting and choices like that. The only issue for me was that the script was like paper thin, which meant the ending didn't really feel as impactful as it probably should have. If the script was a little bit better and focused on John Wick's like growth, the ending might have been more impactful than how it was perceived for me. But that's just me. If you really enjoyed it, let me know down in the comments below. So next up is It Chapter 2. I'd watched Chapter 1 a couple months ago, like August last year, I think. So I watched Chapter 2 this month, and it's not as good as the first one, or what I can remember from the first one. It's a bit confusing at times, and it feels like a bunch of shorts just like together, and then they all like come together in the end. There's not a lot connecting it, and they don't really talk about their like hallucinations with each other really, so it feels like very separate things. And then the thing that really confused me was one of the guys like saw the ritual and he lied to everyone about it being the way to kill Pennywise, and I was like, what? Like, they didn't make it very obvious to why they did that. It just felt very confusing. The film is at its best though when Pennywise is just being plain creepy. Like under the, what's it called? The stand? Yeah, under the stand during the game, that was really creepy. And then the balloons was really creepy. The stuff in the beginning with the gay couple was really creepy. Yeah, it was done really weirdly, but the stuff they did right was really good. It's just there was a lot in the middle that didn't really make sense, and pacing was really interesting, but yeah. So not my favorite, but still a really good film. Not really good. So not my favorite, but still an alright. Keeping on horror, as this is kind of the month's theme, I watched Final Destination. I'd heard a lot of like references in pop culture about it, but I'd never like actually seen it or seen any shots, and it wasn't really what I was expecting. Like people were just like shockingly dying, and no like character moments were done beforehand. We couldn't really like connect with the suspects or the main group of kids before they died, only like the main two at the end. But like it was very weirdly paced, and it's just like not really my thing. I prefer like connecting with the dead people before they die and then them dying. It just like makes it feel more meaningful. Just like people straight up dying without me knowing them is just like, I don't care. Doesn't mean anything, you know? Yeah. So it's like an alright film, but it's not really my thing. Another horror is Carrie from 1976. This one was just quite slow, but really good at keeping the state of uneasiness throughout the whole film. Like through the sound, the cinematography, the editing, you always feel just uneasy. Like something is about to happen, but it doesn't. Nothing happens, but you're always like, oh my God, this is really fucking creepy. Yeah. And then the final prom scene is just incredible, especially for that time period. They had to do that all practically. So the paint, the roof falling down, fire, it was all practical, and it all looked super convincing, and it was just really creepy. And especially at the very end when the hand got like out of the ground and grabbed her in the vision, that was also really creepy. So a lot of the ending was done really well. It was just leading up to it. Even though it had the constant state of uneasiness, it was just like a bit too slow. I think I needed a little bit more telekinesis stuff dropped in there for me to just like keep me interested. But yeah, no, really solid film, especially for that time period. So next up is Cabin in the Woods. It's not what I expected. For some reason, I expected it to be more like Knock at the Cabin without the existential crisis stuff going on. It was just like people killing some people in a cabin. But what they did was like subverting expectations and having like another kind of people controlling them. And it was interesting because they let us in on that before the characters knew about it. So we weren't really watching stuff as it unfolded. It was more like watching them watch stuff unfolded. So we kind of got a hint at what was going on. We didn't get everything at once, but it still felt like really interesting. It was an interesting way of presenting information, not usual for films. But for me, it had really weird kind of character development. I didn't feel like the characters were too different when they entered the game to when they were in real life. It just didn't do enough to convince me that like Chris Hemsworth wasn't a snobby little jock, and the blonde chick wasn't a person who flirts with a lot of people and dances with them, and that, I don't know, people were like virgins and stuff like that. It should have done, I think the introduction to the FBI stuff or whatever organization they were, should have been a lot smaller, and then we had a little bit more of an introduction with the teenagers. Are they teens? With the young people about to enter the simulation kind of vibe. But yeah, that was my main gripe, but it was still fun to see Chris Hemsworth younger, because I didn't really know he had like projects. I know he was in Home and Away, I think, or like Neighbours, but I didn't realize he had things before Thor. I really thought, for some reason, I thought in my head Thor was his like big film that he did it first in America. He didn't really do anything else in America, but he did Cabin at the Woods. So that was really cool. To close out the month, I watched another horror film, Final Destination 2. This one, I feel like ended a lot more satisfyingly than the first film. It gave reason and like closure that they weren't gonna die anyways, even though it still had that like open-ended ending, but it still closed off something. And also the incidences or the accidents that happen didn't feel leveled up. So like in sequels, like Scream makes a note to point out that in sequels, there's a lot more stakes and it's bigger. this film didn't really feel any bigger than the first. In the first, we had like a plane accident. In this one, we had a lot of car accidents. It was mainly focused around cars, which just felt very small, very confined to the like ground. In the first one, you really felt like anything could kill anybody. But in this one, it was very grounded in the deaths. And that's everything I watched in the month of March. If you wanted more in-depth analysis on any of the films I mentioned here today, leave a note down in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like and be sure to return on my next one. Alright, thanks guys for watching. Bye.